This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
But anyway, right now we have on Gordon Chang, and so much is taking place in the Far East.
Big stuff is happening in Korea.
Yeah. But question, Gordon, I'm looking at the crowds that are celebrating the impeachment of the president in South Korea. There's like tens of thousands. And it's amazing they're flying their own Korean, South Korean flag and the American flag together. You almost never see that.
Yes, really what you're seeing are the crowds who are against the impeachment of President Yoon Suk-yeol. They fly American flags, and they're larger than the crowds supporting the impeachment of President Yoon. And that's fascinating because if you look at public opinion polls, most South Koreans favor the impeachment. But what's happened in the last couple of weeks is that the opposition Democratic Party of Korea, which is leftist, has really gone overboard. And I think people now understand how dangerous it would be to remove the president of the country.
So what is going to happen, Gordon Chang? I looked at a scene in Parliament. You had all the members of Parliament. They were up as the president was speaking, and they were shaking their fist at him. I thought they were going to assault him at some point.
Yes, about 4 hours ago, the National Assembly, which is the unicameral legislature of South Korea, voted to impeach acting President Han Duck-soo, who was put in place after the impeachment of President Yoon Suk-yeol. The Democratic Party of Korea, which is known as Minju, had decided to impeach anybody who opposed their plans, even if they were just acting lawfully. So it's clear that the leftists are using democratic institutions to destroy democracy. The Democratic Party of Korea, the last time it held the presidency was before Yoon Suk-yeol. There was a guy named Moon Jae-in, and he actually tried to end the separate existence of South Korea. So if there's a new president from the Democratic Party of Korea, we cannot assume that South Korea will remain in existence because they'll try to merge South Korea into North Korea, perhaps on North Korea's terms. But we know that Minju, the Democratic Party of Korea, is very pro-North Korea, very pro-China, very anti-America. And this is going to be a very difficult time for the free world because we could lose South Korea as a free society.
Now, even though we have our troops stationed along the DMZ, they've been there ever since the cessation of the conflict in Korea many, many years ago. You could actually see people who enjoy freedom, economic prosperity in South Korea, some of the biggest corporations in the world are housed there, actually giving that up to join an oppressive regime like they have in North Korea?
Most of the people in South Korea want the U.S. to remain. We have a mutual defense treaty, and we have 28,500 troops there. But the leadership of the Democratic Party of Korea would break the treaty if it had the power to do so. And soon it's going to probably take over the presidency. And although it is restrained by democratic institutions and by the people of South Korea, this will be a time where the alliance will be tested. We could end up being tossed out of South Korea. It could end up being a communist state. We really can't rule too much out. Yes, the people of South Korea don't want that, but there are times in history when people are not able to restrain their leaders, and we are approaching one of those.
Well, this all started with the president imposing martial law. What was that about?
Great question. President Yoon Suk-yeol was complaining that the Democratic Party of Korea was blocking democratic processes, including impeaching a lot of officials. I think that President Yoon should not have declared martial law, but having seen what's happened over the last couple of weeks, his actions don't look as indefensible as they once did. But right now, South Korea is in crisis, and it's not clear where all of this ends up. We survived 5 years of Moon Jae-in, the leftist president. But times are different now, Curtis, and we may not survive another 5 years of a leftist president in South Korea. Explain
to us how it is that Red China has influence over the running of the Panama Canal. Our impression in America is that by 1999, Panama was in control.
Yes, well, China has port operations at both ends of the canal. And those port operations, although they're technically civilian, they can be turned into military outposts. That is the judgment of General Laura Richardson in the middle of 2022 when she was the head of U.S. Southern Command. She took a helicopter ride over the canal zone and pointed out all of the Chinese companies. There are many ways China can close the canal, and we have let China do that. So at this point, I think President Trump is right. We need to have a reexamination of our relationship with Panama over the canal because the Panamanians, and to a large extent because of American neglect, we've allowed China to be able to control the canal.
Gordon, John Katsimatidis, why is President Biden allowing this? The Panama Canal and the Suez Canal.
Two different stories. On the Panama Canal, it's not just Biden. It's Biden and all of his predecessors going back to 1999 when we transferred the Panama Canal and the canal zone to Panama. And so this is...
Yeah, but when did China come into play? What year was that?
They came into play very soon afterwards as they started to, first of all, send a lot of ships through the Panama Canal, but also they got port contracts at both ends of the canal.
And are the Chinese ships paying a cheaper price than the American ships?
No. Everyone pays the same fees going through the canal. The Canal Zone Authority, though, as of the first of next year, will be substantially raising fees, the transit fees through the canal. And this will affect the U.S. disproportionately because they are going to be charging, for instance, LNG carriers exorbitant fees. That's important for us because they're transporting American LNG. So that is something which is a point of contention, as President Trump talked about when he complained about excessive fees. John mentioned the Suez Canal.
Yes.
Suez Canal is Biden's fault, the way he allowed the Houthi militia to close off the Red Sea. That didn't have to happen, and Biden is mostly responsible for that. That's a long story, but the current president indeed is the one who allowed the Iranians to attack Israel and allowed Iran to continue to supply the Houthi militia with the weapons and the money that they have been using to stop Red Sea shipping. In other words, stop the Suez Canal.
Gotcha. Well, Gordon, we'll talk to you again on Sunday at the Cats Roundtable, and we'll get any updates.
I look forward to that, John, and thank you so much, Curtis.
You're welcome, Gordon Chang.